have you got a ticket to ride?
Oh, I wish I had.
Have you got your bicycle clips on?
I certainly have, yes.
Is your crash helmet to hand?
Yes.
Good. It would seem then that you're fully prepared and ready to...
Joyride. I can start and then you can carry on.
Okay, after you.
Shall I give you a real big bit of bluster?
Please do,
you ready?
yes.
He's the greatest country and western singer that there's ever been, ever. You carry on.
That's quite a good start. A man who has many Grammys, a man who is a kindly and good man, and a man with a great voice, a man with great records. He's here. It's Brad Paisley.
Hello, Brad.
Hey, how's it going? That is some bluster right there.
That's full bluster, that, isn't it?
It's great you could join us today in Nashville. We spoke to Joe Bonamassa recently, who was in Nashville, and of course Joe he's a big collector of guitars, obsessively. In fact, one might say. I mean, the collector's gene with him is so much so that he's got 450 guitars. Are you a collector of anything, Brad?
Yeah, I would say I collect guitars. I mean,
how many have you got?
I don't know the answer to that. I don't think it's nearly what Joe has, but I might be halfway to his problem. But Joe has a problem. He's got an addiction that is probably something he needs help with.
I mean, he's got an itch he can't scratch.
Yes. But I think
it's unbelievable.
But I think, is it like Oscar Wilde said, with temptation, you either have to avoid it or yield to it. And with Joe, he's yielded to those guitars.
Joe's story is really fascinating that way. And just, knowing what he does and how his sort of hobby revolves around finding these perfect specimens in places and also rescuing. I like rescuing guitars. I like finding that vintage guitar that sort of needs help and buying that and making it what it ought to be. There is something about, in justification for our addictions, there's something about vintage instruments that the stories and the travels and the things that have happened around that piece of wood are kind of contained in it. They're Horcruxes. They're these things that from Harry Potter. They're magical items that sort of, I feel like anybody who owned a guitar, you feel that in it. And so I think in our defense, these are historical items, right?
I think that's right. But do you think, I mean, I've had, I'm a piano player really, but I play the guitar a little bit, and I've bought guitars only in America when I've been on tour over the years. But if I pick one up, and I'm no great guitarist, but if I pick one up and it just has a nice feel, I feel as though whoever played it before me, who's had it, it always feels like somebody has owned that thing for years and they've just been playing nice songs or something on it. You get a vibration. Is that what happens to you when you pick them up?
Without a doubt. I feel like sometimes guitars are magical right off the assembly line or right off whenever they're made, but a lot of the times it takes memories need to be made with that instrument for it to feel right. I bet you feel that way about a new piano too. It's sort of like feels like it needs to season or something.
Well,
right?
my piano, I'm not a piano player, but I've got an exceptional piano at home, which used to be in the ITV rehearsal rooms from the early 70s through to the 90s. So everyone who's on ITV, which is a British TV channel, right? People like Les Dawson, Morecambe and Wise, they've all played on this piano.
Well, that will have some effect. I did buy a piano actually once in a store in Texas, an old Wurlitzer Spinet, the same as the one that's in Sun Studios, because I'd just been in Sun Studios it's a 1949 Wurlitzer Spinet upright jangling piano. So when you play it, you sound like Jerry Lee Lewis. And I just felt this had been in someone's home, and they'd just been playing. I just knew they were nice people. I just knew this. They'd sat around this piano, and it had given them lots of pleasure. And it was and immediately it became my friend. And unbelievably, they tried to say, oh, you don't want that one. Let's sell you a new one. I said, no, I really want this one. I sort of paid for it. It wasn't a lot of money, and unbelievably, it was then delivered in a box sort of about 3 months later, just when I thought, hey, they've scammed me here and they've completely forgot, they've just taken the money and we'll never see him again. It turned up, and I've got it here in my studio, and it's like my old friend. So it's like an old friend that you're caressing and being part of. And you're right, the piano.
You do that.
I do caress it, don't I? In the private moments. But the piano, like the guitar, there's no two that are alike. But when you get a particular guitar, does it inspire you? When you get a new instrument, does it then inspire you to write a song?
It does. I think, especially acoustic guitars. I mean, acoustic guitars are also, they're another level. I mean, things like old Fenders are magical in their assembly, but they're very simple. They're a slab of wood. I've always called a Telecaster it's a cutting board with a neck. You could basically chop vegetables on the back, and then play the front if you'd want.
You could do that live.
Yeah, that'd be fun actually. But the thing about an acoustic is it's sort of a feat of engineering, the way that the bracing and the wood and the vibration and everything, and it's got to be this very, very special, crazy, conglomeration of stuff that becomes magical. There's songs in them. I mean, I think an old guitar, my favorite guitar is acoustic one is a 38 Martin D28 that, I bought because I always wanted one of those. They call them pre-war, pre-World War II guitars. They're very special. And I bought one with some insurance money that I'd gotten after the Nashville flood, that I literally just wanted one. And then the stories that came with it, after I bought it, it's a long story, but the family found out I bought this because it was dropped off for me at the Opry. I was doing a thing with Little Jimmy Dickens, and they brought the guitar to me at the Opry after I'd purchased it. And they said, oh, you should play that. So that's the guitar. The first time I ever play that guitar publicly is when they put the circle of wood back in the Opry House after the flood. And it's me and Jimmy Dickens standing there playing it. Then I come to find out that the family that owned it is from my home place in West Virginia. And the man moved away in the war to, he went to California. So I didn't even realize this guitar was purchased by someone who worked with my grandfather.
No.
Yeah, it's crazy. And didn't know that until I played a gig the next weekend. They saw me on the news with that guitar. They had been notified that I had purchased their father's old guitar. They came to my concert in North Carolina where I was playing, which was another random spot, but the son had moved there. I had a concert on that weekend. He shows up at the gig and I bring him backstage and I said, so this was your dad's guitar? And he said, oh yeah, he loved this thing more than anything in the world. And I said, have you seen it? And he said, no, I haven't seen it since he died. And I said, well, I've got it. I brought it. So I went back, I opened up the case and he started crying when he saw it, and sat in the back dressing room and played songs for them on it. And the son didn't play guitar, and they just really wanted the right person to wind up with their father's treasured instrument. And the first song I ever wrote with that guitar, I got the guitar, I sat around, got together with a co-writer, and we wrote the song This Is Country Music on it. And it felt like that song wanted to come from that guitar.
So it came out of the guitar.
And that is country music, family music, isn't it? That's a very touching thing. I think it's nice that when the family want it to, I mean, Joe Bonamassa was talking about a guitar that he had to have a seance with the man that owned it, with the late sort of owner of it, to make sure it was okay if he bought it. I wasn't sure though, talking to Joe, if they weren't just doing all that for Joe to make not just egg him on a bit. I don't know. I didn't like to say, because we said to him, what is the unicorn? What is the holy grail of guitar collecting? And it was this particular guitar that he had. So I think but moving along from guitars a moment, are you a transport person? Do you? I mean, your life. Well, maybe not at the moment, but generally as an artist is one of touring. Is it touring and traveling something that you enjoy?
Yeah, well, obviously it's essential to what we do. If you want to go play for people in other places, and that's been the hardest part about this pandemic. It is. It's something I didn't realize how much I enjoyed it until obviously they took it away. And it's there are things about traveling that really get old, obviously, but when you're doing that musically, when you're doing that for a living, and you are going and seeing the faces of people in other places as they respond to what you've made musically, it's the most rewarding thing in the world. And I've said this to a few people recently. They said, what do you miss the most? And I said, I miss, playing in Europe. I miss playing the O2. I miss playing, Norway, Sweden, Ireland, and especially London. I mean, to me, that has been the most surreal and groundbreaking thing, was the fact that music has become so global. And yeah, I've loved every aspect of being over there and playing for you guys. I mean, it's the experience of a lifetime to hear country music sung back to you in a British accent.
Yeah. Oh, I wrote a country and western song.
Did you? It's country music nowadays, of course, mate.
Is it really?
Yes.
Just
Yes.
country?
Yeah, exactly.
The western's gone, is it?
No, that's just saying, just
Right.
Well,
bringing you up to
it's all
speed.
Western to you.
Yeah.
I know these roads like the back of my hand. I'm going for an op on my pituitary gland. Is that any good?
It's not a bad song. I don't know.
It's the opener.
Yeah, it's the.
Don't know what happens after that.
I mean, I think the real great thing about the great country song, and Brad is the guru, not me, but my understanding was the simplicity of it and the raw beauty and the poetry at the same time. So it actually got you feeling. It was like an arrow straight to your heart of emotions. I'm not sure
that one really.
if that one does it.
I was sunbathing in California once and asleep, and a horse leapt over me and woke me up as its testicles brushed me cheek.
How fantastic.
Are you serious?
No, I'm not serious. I just made that up.
I believed him. It's like this all
You
the
did
time.
believe me for a second.
I believed him for a moment. This happens every day. I think, wow, that's amazing, and then it's just another great big sort of fantasy. How about
fantasy? Yeah. it is.
how about motor vehicles? Are you a car man? Do you like cars?
I do. I do. I like. I'm a big fan of Chevy Corvettes. That's sort of our classic sports car, obviously.
Yeah.
We love those. I've had a couple of those. I love those. You know that Jeff Beck, who's a big friend of Jim's and mine, is not only a Corvette fanatic, he does all the work on them himself. Did you know that?
I did not know that about him. That's amazing.
On my Corvettes, if I had a problem, rather than ring the garage, I'd ring him first, which is maybe why they never worked.
Yeah. But do you know what? I saw one in Kent, in England, yesterday, and I thought that's almost like a ray of sunshine. It was just, it was a red Corvette, the old 50, 60 one, and I thought that just looks fantastic, doesn't it?
And what do you have a Corvettes at the moment?
I do. I got the oldest one I've got is a 61, which is the old white Cove.
Yes.
That white trimmed.
That's what I saw. Yeah.
Red. Yeah. That to me, like, you had to think back in the 50s when that came out, it had to see one of those going down the road, had to feel like, like you say, a ray of sunshine. But the same thing, the one I don't have that I'd love to have is the 60s version, which they call the Stingray, which is the first one that had the split window and in the back, and
the 63 Corvette.
Yeah. And when you think about that, had to look like a spaceship back then. That must have been like, because there's still no car that looks like that anywhere.
Fantastic looking car, and so optimistic looking car. They hadn't landed on the moon by then, but this car's saying we probably can land on the moon. Yeah. Everything's the war's behind us, the depression, the 1930s, everything's getting better. And this car is summing that up. Get in this car and we can drive to where it's getting better.
My brother-in-law, who lives in New Jersey, bought one of those, but he said he got it because when he was a kid, he had a little model of it, a gold one. And when he got older and got some, he found the car, which was exactly the same as the little toy car that he had when he was a kid, and bought it. I mean, that's just, you grow up and get the real thing.
Did you have models of the Corvettes when you were small before?
Yeah, I had pictures all over my walls of them. And one of the first things I bought was in the early part of my career, I bought a used Corvette from a man. It was a 99, which was when they first started really becoming good cars again. And so I drove that around for a little while. And then since then I've had some new ones, and I just went and took delivery at the factory of the newest, which is the mid-engine now. And it is you talk about a work of art for the price they sell it. These new ones are really great cars. And, as a kid growing up, dreaming of that, I remember in high school that it just felt like such a far-fetched pipe dream to ever own one of those, because, you're just scrambling, you're scraping together money to get anything to drive. And then the idea of the luxury of being able to have a fun vehicle like that, that's just a toy, felt so out of reach. So, I mean, I think that's a typical thing for a lot of musicians, get to this point and go purchase that thing that they had on their wall that they didn't think they could get.
Yeah, I had Apollo 11 on my wall, but I can't ever see that happening.
You had a what?
Apollo 11.
No, I think you're right.
No, you're not going to be doing that.
No.
And has your car got the detachable hard top?
You mean the new one?
No, the 1961 one.
Yes, it does.
That's quite good. Although it does take two people to lift it on and off, I think, doesn't it? But and if you're going for a drive in your Corvette, where would you go? Where would you in either the new one or the old one?
In the new one, I would go. That's just fun, because it's the thing is, it's 0 to 60 in under 3 seconds.
Wow,
it's crazy, and that's just fun going on any back roads. What I love to do is when I have new music, is listen in a vehicle. Music to me is best with the road coming at you. And so I would drive the new one for that. The old one would be a specific situation where I know it's not going to rain, and I know it's also not going to be parked in a place where it's going to get the door dinged or something. You don't want to. The 61 is a little nerve-wracking to drive because you just don't want to hurt it. But the new one is one you can take anywhere.
And we were talking earlier about the Batmobile, because you're wearing a Batman hat. The Batmobile is the car that every kid wanted.
Yes.
For me, I had a little model of that. In fact, I had a model of it, and I took it to school. I loved it that much. And the teacher took it off me and said, "I'm going to confiscate this." I was about 9, I think. I said to my friend, "What does confiscate mean?" He said, "Burn."
Terrifying for you. So you thought you were going to have your Batmobile burned?
Well, and I was in tears. I said, "Please don't burn my Batmobile."
Brad, did you ever have did you have a poster of the Batmobile? Did you ever fancy one of those?
Yeah, I think actually probably that car, along with a few others from television, led to, my love of them. And I think a lot of us could point to the Batmobile as the way it begins, with this sort of like, when you're little, there's something about Batman for a little kid. Both of my children are obsessed with comic books and that, and the Batmobile is like a gateway. It's like you're into the car sort of obsession with it. It used to be that in the old TV shows, the action shows of the 80s and 90s, a car was essential. Think about the Dukes of Hazzard and then General Lee and the Knight Rider. The Knight Rider car killed me too. Like, that was like, oh my God, look at this. James Bond with Aston Martins. I mean, it's truly I feel like we don't do that enough in modern pop culture like they used to, do they? I mean, James Bond, of course, still does with Aston, but for the most part, it seems like cars aren't a part of stuff so much.
And here, a message from our sponsors.
Jim, my garden hose always gets twisted and tangled when I'm watering my garden.
Agonise no more. What you need is the No Not No More hose from Kingdom of Stopcocks.
And how does this hose avoid entanglement?
Simple. It's only 3 foot long.
Boom, shakalaka. One thing I was going to bring up, just on another subject, is the store which you've opened, and it's been a tough time for everybody in this virus situation. Tell us a little bit about the store. What's happened there?
The store is something that we started working on 5 years ago for Nashville. My wife and I spent a lot of time in Santa Barbara in California, which is an amazing little city north of Los Angeles. When we're out there, that's where we go. And one year she felt like our kids, around Thanksgiving, she felt like our kids were acting spoiled. So she said, I'm taking them to volunteer at a food charity today. So we asked around and they said, oh, you need to go to this place called Unity Shop. So we went there and met this older woman that had started this charity. And it was basically the idea of what we kind of adopted for the store. And the store it's a grocery store, like a corner grocery almost, that feels like you're in a real grocery store. You walk in and there's a vegetable aisle and a food aisle over here. And the experience is so normal. You walk through, you pick out the items you need, you go to check out. Difference being that if you're there shopping and you're somebody who has qualified for this by either losing your job or ending up on hard times, you don't pay. It's a free grocery store. So we've been able to do this. And luckily, we had it all in place. We had our permit to open and the city had approved it and we were ready to go last March. And all of a sudden, instead of a ticker tape opening where we announce, okay, we have this big charity, we're going to do this, and here's how you can come get some food if you're down on your luck. And instead, we just opened, and we were able to start out first week of the pandemic feeding people. And we had to change our model, obviously, where people weren't inside shopping this time last year at all, but it has been an amazing thing. We thought we would do around 300 meals in the first, or 300,000 meals in the first year would have been an amazing achievement in our mind. And we hit 1 million meals in January so far.
Wow,
so
it's a brilliant thing to congratulate you on. And of course, that's in Nashville, is it, where it's set up?
It is. Yeah. The most rewarding thing about the concept really is the normalcy. When somebody, and the dignity that comes with choice, as opposed to a lot of food charities hand you a bag of food and it may not even be what you want to eat. But when you come in there with your family, you're pushing your kids around in a shopping cart. You're able to pick out things. It feels so normal to the kid that you save face a little bit. That's, I think, one of the tougher things for a parent when they are down in their luck is this sort of feeling of, they don't like to let their children feel the pressure they're feeling. And so this kind of charity gives them a respite from that.
I think it's to be really congratulated. I think it's a brilliant thing to do, and really, really great. Now, out of interest, talking about journeys a bit, we've spoken about cars and things like that. Is there another form of transport that you particularly enjoy using? Do you look forward to plane journeys or boat journeys or even walking? What is your other favorite? What are your favorite? Or cycling? I don't know.
I think planes, there's something magical about it. When you can get on a vehicle in America and see the sunrise in England, it still feels like a miracle when you think about it. Again, I'll never forget waking up on an overnight flight and seeing Land's End out the window as we're heading for one of the first times to your side of the pond. And planes fascinate me. I'm not scared of them like a lot of people are.
No, I've got no fear, but it's great. I still get a thrill looking out of the window and looking at people's houses and thinking someone lives in there and that's their life. They're in there now and they're having the dinner.
Yes.
And that's their life. And it really brings it down to you, doesn't it? It's like a great bit of empathy you feel with people.
Yes. That's the most surprising thing, I think, is that as different as things can feel in another country, like when we land in England and, you're driving on the wrong side of the road and all that, I still feel it still feels deep down immediately. It feels like, oh, these are just people. It just feels so similar at the same time.
Do you know why people drive on the right and the left?
No.
Well, imagine 200 years ago, before cars, you're riding along on your horse.
Yes.
And someone comes the other way, you've got to get your sword out and fight them. So you take your sword out.
Not always. I mean, they might be a friend.
Well, yeah, but if you were, that's what. So you take your sword out. So you're on the left-hand side. You take your sword out, and you can fight them, presuming that you're right-handed. And Napoleon was left-handed, so he changed it all around.
Well, I
Really?
don't. Again, Brad,
I'm not sure I believe this.
This is
no, exactly.
true.
I was just going to say thank you for listening. But with me, I think you're right to be slightly sceptical. It might be true. I did hear that the reason that in England they drive on the other side of the road is, or they started on that side of the road, is because in Old London Bridge in the Middle Ages in the 14th century, they had to work out, because it was very small, London Bridge, and it was the only bridge across the River Thames, they had to work out which side they were going to travel. It had to be one side or the other. And so they decided it was going to be what we have now. When you are in England, are you able to drive? Do you drive yourself ever?
I have, and I thought I probably shouldn't be doing this. I did a lot of driving into Italy on one trip, and that was really something.
And of course, in Germany, well, they're on the same side of the road, they're as you. But in Germany, the great exciting thing is, you can drive, literally, if you're on the freeway, you can drive at 200 miles an hour. It's legal.
Yeah.
It's unbelievable.
Yeah, it's legal.
Unbelievable.
I wish we drove on the right. It'd make things a lot easier, wouldn't it?
It is interesting that you guys cling to this, because it's kind of you and your territories, and that's it.
Yeah, I think
Right?
Japan and Australia.
Yeah.
Both islands. Yeah, both little islands. But there was one place where I think it was Sweden or somewhere where they had them drive, and then they said, right, we're going to change it because we're connected by land to these other countries, and we've got to change this. And so at midnight on a certain whatever it was, on the sort of midnight on the 14th of September 1959 or whenever it was, they all then changed. But I was thinking that's terrifying, because if it was 10 past midnight and you're just leaving somewhere, I mean, does everybody know this? I mean, what a frightening idea.
Yeah, if you didn't get the memo, it's lights out.
I remember driving in Los Angeles on a 12-lane, 6-lane, trying to come off to go into the airport, and I was nearly in tears. It was so frightening when you get on those, there's 6 lanes going that way and 6 lanes going the other way.
Oh,
That
it's
is
something.
terrifying.
And the only consolation is you have plenty of time to figure it out, usually because you're stuck in traffic, so you're getting oriented between vehicles.
You're trying to pull off.
Admiring the people on the other side. Now, it's been fantastic speaking to you today, and it's so good of you to take the time from doing all of the work you've been doing in Nashville to chat to us. One final question I just forgot, because in fact when we've discussed this with a few of our guests inadvertently, which I've forgotten, which is because Joe was talking about the sort of the guitar that was sort of was possessed by a spirit. Jim here saw a ghost, which was a big egg at one point. Rita Wilson had a house that had a friendly ghost in it.
Yeah.
Have you ever come across a ghost in Nashville?
Great question. There are ghost tours in Franklin. I personally have not had any experience with a ghost here, but there are ghost tours in Franklin, Tennessee, where you can, and my family did this. I didn't do it, but they walk you through downtown Franklin, and you go to the various supposedly haunted houses. Franklin's an old Civil War town, so it goes back to the 1800s, and that city actually had a battle of the Civil War. So there's a lot of that. And one thing that happened to us was when we were over there the last time in Europe, we went to Siena for a night or two. Well, we were going to do 2 nights in Siena, and we only did one because we stayed in this old hotel in Siena. And my wife, in the middle of the night, woke up to a shadow moving and something beat on her pillow, and she shook me and was like, it was really like, she swears, she's like, I'm telling you, it like something came in here, and the room was weird. Like, you went in and there were pictures of like the paintings were like torture.
Oh,
Like paintings of torture. And then my parents were down the hall in another room, and my dad had a similar situation where he had a dream about being like strangled. Like, everybody was having these weird hallucinations but me. And so we got out of there. We actually left and went and stayed in Florence the next night.
I think I must be a bit like you. That's what everybody around me would be sort of seeing these sort of apparitions, and I just sleep through the whole thing.
I know. And I'd love to see one.
Yeah, longing to see one. Exactly. Exactly.
There's still time yet.
Good. Well, it's been fantastic having you as our guest here. Thank you very much for joining us, Brad Paisley.
Thank you, Brad.
Thank you, guys. Can't wait to see you again.
Well, there goes Brad in his Corvette.
Yes, driving on the correct side of the road.
Yes, on the right side of the road, off to organise his store. What
Exactly.
a great fella.
What a great fella to do all of that. Really, that's right. He's a very modest, a very nice fellow, and got a Corvette. So nothing not to like.
This podcast was produced and edited by Molly Stewart.
Sound engineers were James Stewart and George Latham.